Okay, let's get started. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Danny Lapin. I am the environmental planner with the Otsego County Conservation Association. I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to present this meeting, um, present this presentation on comprehensive planning and its ability to guarantee or help guarantee a vibrant future for your municipality. So for the ground rules for this presentation, this is an interactive webinar. Please feel free to ask questions anytime. When doing so, you can use the chat window or raise your hand to ask questions. If you are not asking a question, please mute your mic. I know that in today's world that certain distractions can happen during meetings, but let's do our best to keep your mics muted so that we can all focus on the material at hand. So our presentations have traditionally had four main objectives. The first is to learn something cool, and that's kind of something that carries across all our programming. More specifically, the purpose of this webinar is to understand what a comprehensive plan is and is not, to understand why comprehensive plans are important, and to understand your role in developing or updating a comprehensive plan. OCCA is a 501c3 nonprofit organization located in the town of Springfield in northern Otsego County. We have 3 full-time staff members and 4 part-time staff. We have 3 program areas: education and outreach, research and monitoring, and policy and planning. I've been an environmental planner with OCCA for 6 years. I'm a nationally certified planner by the American Planning Association. I started at OCCA in 2014, fresh out of grad school, where I obtained a master's degree in environmental policy from Bard College in the Hudson Valley. So more specifically, when OCCA talks about what we do, you'll see these kind of pictorial representations about kind of what it means when we deal with programs related to policy and planning, research and management, and education and outreach. We do everything ranging from nature hikes, which you see in the top left panel, to citizen science monitoring for water quality, as you'll see in the top right panel. We do a lot of invasive species control and monitoring, as you see in the bottom left. And finally, in my field, you'll see we do a lot of planning, as you see in this kind of master plan image in the bottom right here. So we do a lot of different things, and we like to think that we accomplish a lot for an organization of 3 full-time staff. So, today's webinar focuses on a comprehensive plan. And for those of you who don't know, comprehensive plans at its core essence basically is a social contract between a municipality and its inhabitants. It takes a snapshot of current environmental, economic, and sociological conditions in a given place and uses them to figure out current challenges facing your town and how to address them. So to rephrase that, you would use your data on the current conditions of your town to inform the creation of strategies that helps make your town a better place. And so what a comprehensive plan is not. In today's hyper-politicized world, there is a lot of misconceptions about what a comprehensive plan is not and what it is not. I would like to kind of set this straight and say that a comprehensive plan is not a regulatory document. Rather, a comprehensive plan is a document that can continuously evolve. It acts as the foundational framework from which local regulations spring forth. It's basically a guide, or again, a social contract between the town and its residents about where the town would like to be over a 20-year planning horizon. Comprehensive plans are not set in stone. Like I said before, they are malleable. They can easily be amended. They can be revised. Recommendations that don't work can be adjusted to focus on other priority projects or other policy approaches to challenges related to transportation, for instance, or to addressing parking minimums, for example. And comprehensive plans are not a panacea to all the challenges facing your municipality. If your municipality is facing budgetary challenges, challenges with controlling industrial uses in communities of color, or facing significant affordable housing challenges, the comprehensive plan alone will not address those challenges. However, they will give you a chance to develop a better understanding of what those challenges are and try out a bunch of new approaches to addressing the challenges you face. And at the same time, the comprehensive plan allows the public to understand what your municipality's position is on key issues ranging from environmental protection to affordable housing. So the comprehensive plan has been around in various forms since the 1840s. The movement started in the 1840s with a movement towards improving sanitation in densely populated urban areas. The overcrowding of cities combined with less than ideal sanitary conditions led to the spread of infectious disease and led city leaders to start thinking about how they can regulate development to improve sanitation and allow more effectively for the flow of people from point A to point B without being overcrowded. The movement toward comprehensive plans transitioned to the City Beautiful movement between the 1890s and 1920s, where architects and city leaders developed, large monuments intended to display cities as a grand place to show public features, in all of their grandeur. So if we think of, the city of San Francisco City Hall, the Denver City Hall, Central Park in New York, all of those were intended to display the appealing nature of cities in a very, high level way. And in those developments, there were things called master plans. And these would be documents which outline kind of how these large public spaces were to be developed, how the development would occur, and kind of who would do what. And from there, the issue with overcrowding kind of continued in the late 1890s, and a planning practitioner named Ebenezer Howard started writing about how cities could develop in a way that minimized overcrowding while protecting your green spaces. And so he proposed the creation of a garden city in his book called Tomorrow, A Peaceful Path Toward Reform. And this book kind of talks about a city which is densely populated at its core. However, it has clear and easy to access transportation corridors which lead out to a ring of green space surrounding the edge of the city. So it basically allows city residents to not only be, live in a compact development, but also be able to get out of the city and experience green open spaces more effectively. And from that, the first comprehensive plan was developed by Daniel Burnham, and he developed what is known as the Plan for Chicago, which was completed in 1909, and it kind of encapsulated the City Beautiful movement and kind of made such a plan cover much more than just one large area. It actually covered the whole city and helped the city of Chicago determine how it wanted to develop, what its issues were, and kind of what it could do to make the city a more attractive place to live, work, and play. And so specifically, when you're getting down to it, it's important to know what a comprehensive plan is according to the laws and regulations of New York State. And the definition here is that a comprehensive plan is a written or graphic document which shows the current conditions, goals, objectives, and policies that a municipality will enact to promote the health, safety, and general welfare of its residents. The definition is purposely broad. However, you'll notice here in the legislative wording that the real purpose of a comprehensive plan is to establish the bedrock of your municipality. It's to show people where your priorities are for developing, where your priorities are for protecting public health. How does a town propose to encourage economic prosperity amongst its residents, so on and so forth. Comprehensive plans are very broad, and this law really gives municipalities a lot of flexibility in how they develop it. And it's also important to say that if you don't have this document, but you have a series of other laws and regulations which kind of achieve the same objective as what you see here, that can be considered a comprehensive plan in court. However, it will not achieve the same benefits, and I'd be happy to discuss the difference between the two in a later webinar. And so some of you may ask, why is a comprehensive plan important? Well, the main thing, is that all land use regulations that are in effect must be consistent with an adopted comprehensive plan. So this means that if you update your comprehensive plan and you call for a massive overhaul of development regulations to facilitate a compact, sustainable community, and your land use regulations are a holdover from another era, say they're about 30 years old, for example, the New York State town law would require you to begin an update of your zoning code immediately after finishing the comprehensive plan update to ensure that the provisions of New York State town law are met. Additionally, all capital improvements funded by a government agency must take the comprehensive plan into account. So what does this mean? This means that if your town is trying to pave roads, if they're trying to do park repairs, if they're trying to, let's say, repair Main Street, and without adding any sort of bike or mass transit feature, and your comprehensive plan says, hey, we want biking, we want mass transit, the capital projects must consider what the comprehensive plan says, according to New York State town law. More broadly, the comprehensive plans establish the groundwork for a sustainable community, both environmentally and economically. Comprehensive plans identify smart, tangible, achievable economic investments that a town can make to bring in business, to create jobs, and to provide more housing to its residents while not compromising its sensitive natural areas. And they do this by creating clear, specific, and concise policy objectives and recommendations with a clear path on how to achieve them. And I'll get more into that later on in the webinar. And for the public, comprehensive plans establish accountability. Town boards and city councils and village boards of trustees are ever changing. And yet comprehensive plans may not change for a 20-year period. And this document allows the public to hold newly elected officials and currently elected officials accountable to the meeting the policy recommendations and mandates enshrined in the comprehensive plan. And it can be a tool to both win and lose elections. So what goes into a comprehensive plan? This webinar will kind of touch on 7 key concepts or or elements of what should be included. We'll be doing deeper dives in later webinars, which I'll get into at the end, where we talk about OCCA's planning school. So the first thing you want to include in a comprehensive plan is a clear identification of the goals and objectives. In a nutshell, what does your town want to accomplish in 20 years? And how are you going to get there? That's what number 1 should be. Number 2 really requires you to consider the regional priorities of like your county, of your neighboring towns, of the state, and to think about how those strategies and plans will affect what goes on in your town. So for example, if there's a town that has a high density of agricultural operations and your county has an adopted agricultural economic development strategy, it would naturally be in your best interest to coordinate your comprehensive plan recommendations with what is included in that agricultural economic development strategy. The next thing to consider would be the existing and proposed intensity of land uses. This, requires both, kind of on the ground and computer-based evaluation. From the computer, you can kind of see how your parcels are aligned. You can kind of see what kind of projects or developments are located where, but that doesn't always provide the full picture. When you drive around your town and see how what your existing land use pattern is, that on the ground feeling kind of provides you a little bit more context about how intense the land is being used around you, what can be done to make it the use of land more efficient and less impactful, and also how local zoning codes could be tweaked to encourage existing patterns of development. Number 4 involves a consideration of agricultural operations. So in many towns around upstate New York, their local zoning codes don't always enable the effective operation of farms and other agricultural enterprises. Comprehensive plans require those creating them to think about the farmer, to think about how they go about their day-to-day activities, and how to figure out how to enable them to succeed and remain prosperous. And so that's a really important provision. Number 5 is the evaluation of your physical and transportation infrastructure. You want to know where your water lines are, where your electric lines are, whether you have adequate internet or cell coverage, and the condition of your road infrastructure, whether it needs to be repaired, whether it's safe for travel, what condition your town's bridges are in. Are they in need of desperate repair? And if so, to what extent do they need to be repaired and how much would that cost? Number 6 is the location of commercial, recreational, community service housing, and historic resources. All of these rely, again, on a mix of personal knowledge, driving around, and on computer-based research. The best approach to finding these is to know people in town and ask them, where are the key businesses? Where are the key recreational resources? Where are the areas where there could be more housing or there isn't adequate housing, and which resources are considered by the townspeople to be historic? All of these can be figured out on the computer, but having that on the ground perspective will allow you to develop a much more keen or accurate understanding of the location of these resources. And number 7 is, the New York State requires municipalities to describe how they will implement a comprehensive plan. And so, I guess the question that you want to ask is, how do we do all of this? This is a lot to do, and it's especially a lot to do for part-time elected officials and or volunteer members of a planning board, for example. So there are 7 key steps, which we'll get into using a case study. The first being identifying the issues. The second being stating the goals of what you want to accomplish. Number 3 is collecting data to inform your approach to implement the plan. Number 4 is to develop the plan itself. Number 5 is to figure out logistically how a plan will be implemented. Number 6 is how to evaluate alternatives. And number 7 is to finally adopt the plan. So to provide some more context to those 7 steps, I'd like to use a case study in which OCCA served as a project lead on the comprehensive plan update. Between 2018 and 2019, OCCA had the distinct pleasure of working with the town of Maryland, which is located about 12 miles east of Cooperstown, and helping them update their comprehensive plan. The project budget for this was $10,000, which is low for a comprehensive plan. Most plans cost anywhere between $50,000 to over $100,000 to complete. However, we made sure that we could stay under budget and facilitate an effective plan update that was hopefully to the town's liking. So for this project, the town of Maryland designated a comprehensive plan steering committee, which worked with OCCA to kind of manage the project and to ensure that the plan was created on time and under budget. So, the most important part of the comprehensive plan process is to get started. It's a major undertaking, and sometimes the inertia of such a large undertaking can really slow things down. And the best advice that I could share is to jump into the plan project and start moving. Once you start moving, things become quite a bit easier. So in the town of Maryland, the project was funded in part by a local appropriation and by existing grant funds. The town established an 8-person steering committee who evaluated whether the plan could be done in-house or if a consultant or consultants were necessary to help the town complete the plan. The steering committee was overseen by an appointed chair, and an OCCA was hired in 2018 to facilitate the development of the comprehensive plan. And in doing so, the steering committee of 8 people committed to making decisions by consensus. All 8 members came from different walks of life, many of whom had differing perspectives on key policy issues such as agricultural, economic development, transportation, and housing. We did not want to make a decision that was split. So in updating the comprehensive plan, we strove to include recommendations that were made by consensus because we felt that we owed it to the town to make sure to be unanimously behind what was being proposed in the comprehensive plan itself. And so once a steering committee was set up, we needed to identify the issues. And in many towns or municipalities or even villages, cities, everyone has a perspective on what the main issues are in a city. So in order to access a large cross-section of the population, we had to do a number of different things so that we could get people in the room and talk to them and figure out what they saw were the main issues facing the town of Maryland. So the first step was to figure out what action items had been accomplished since the plan's last update in 2008. And to do this, we interviewed both the town board and the comprehensive plan steering committee to figure out what the town had accomplished in the past 10 years and what they had not. From there, we felt that it was really important to get as much of the public perspective as we could. So the steering committee and OCCA worked together and released a stakeholder survey which reached 1,080 residents. The survey results were analyzed by a team of high school seniors from Skinevus Central School, and they did this so that they could participate effectively in local government, and we are very, very grateful for their involvement. OCCA and the steering committee proceeded to hold 3 open houses, 3 focus group meetings, and conduct 10 stakeholder interviews. We also performed outreach at 2 community events and presented plan progress at numerous town board meetings. And so what were the common issues? The main issue facing the town of Maryland was the need to attract jobs and encourage economic development. This is an issue that, kind of pertains to every small town or even every larger village or city in New York State. The main, when people run for office, they say jobs, jobs, jobs. This figuring out how to bring in business, how to keep it in your municipality, and how to have such business benefit your municipality positively is going to be probably the biggest issue that we planners have to face when creating a comprehensive plan. The second issue was assisting local farmers with the marketing and distribution of product. Small scale farmers often have a difficult time breaking into new markets, and the town can play a facilitating role in making that happen. The towns can create local marketing campaigns such as a Made in Maryland campaign, or creating a cooperative marketing group that jointly advertises and markets their products to key vendors throughout the area. The third issue was that residents wanted to encourage a mix of land uses along their main street and amend the zoning code to enable such development. So the town of Maryland is located right along an interstate highway, which is I-88, and they also have a state highway, State Highway 7. The interstate, when the interstate was created in the 1970s, that took a lot of car traffic off State Highway 7 and off the town's main street. And so conversely, there was a decline in business presence along State Highway 7 in the town of Maryland. Today, the town of Maryland is trying to figure out, okay, what can we do to create more dense, compact development of commercial enterprises or even housing along State Highway 7 so that we can start bringing more car traffic off of the interstate and back onto our main street. The final issue was to keep young people in town. Keeping young people in town means finding a place for them to work that pays a livable wage and gives them a place to live, again, at an affordable price. While they're still young, it means giving them a place to gather outside of school. Many kids, once they get out of school, want to hang around and hang out, and there needs to be adequate social infrastructure to help make that happen. So once we identified the issues, the next step was to identify the goals of the plan. And the person that is responsible, or the people responsible for identifying the goals of a plan, are always going to be the public. The public is king in a comprehensive plan. They are tasked with providing input, which should inform the development of clear goals. And so in this process, the public should always be at the top. Any goal that is proposed should be subject to public comment. The public should be empowered to propose, offer counter proposals or amend goals to better fit public need. And in order to do this, the public needs to be engaged. From there, the public and those developing a comprehensive plan will identify priority projects that need to be implemented. These can be in many different policy areas, ranging from public health to transportation, to waste management, to fighting climate change or encouraging energy efficiency. These are projects that can be achievable, that have a price tag, and that have an end date. And so these priority projects will represent what your municipality will like to accomplish over a 20-year planning horizon. Once those priority projects are identified, usually the people developing a plan will want to create broad goals based off the resident survey. And so the resident survey will identify kind of what the public would like to see in their town, ranging from more affordable housing to a cleaner environment, to improved social services, maybe to another library or community facility. These are more kind of aspirational objectives. However, it's incumbent upon those developing a comprehensive plan to think about how to achieve those aspirations and develop broad goals and related action steps to make those goals a reality. And so I kind of combine the next step in that above statement. And finally, the most important piece is to develop an implementation plan to get the job done. And this means identifying what it is you want to get done, who's going to do it, how much is it going to cost, when can it get done, and who's going to be in charge of making it happen. So this is kind of the approach we took in the town of Maryland. We really made sure that the public and the town board were behind what OCCA was kind of trying to do and what the steering committee felt would benefit the town. And so the next, and most difficult piece of a comprehensive plan is to collect the data. Data can come from many sources. And if you're not familiar with gathering data such as census data or environmental data or infrastructure data, it can be kind of overwhelming. But don't fear, there's a lot of different ways in which you can gather said data. Data about your town in terms of who goes where, what the town history is, what the town culture is, where people go to hang out, the stories behind interesting buildings or art installations or other unique features of your town can often be gathered from personal accounts, family histories, and or one-on-one stakeholder interaction. So those data really tell the story of what your town looks like or is from a cultural perspective, and that's incredibly important, if not more important than the data itself. So most data used in comprehensive plans comes from the US Census Bureau and your local and state agencies. The US Census Bureau data are easily accessible. They're easy to filter through. There's a lot of resources which will teach you how to parse through that website. And the data from local and state agencies are usually available. It may take a little bit more time to get, but most public officials are more than willing to share whatever data they have with you, especially if it's being used to inform the creation of a comprehensive plan. If you're looking for natural resource data, those can be found in the New York State GIS Clearinghouse. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with GIS, GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems. It's basically an online cartography program which allows users to perform complex geographical analyses, such as determining the most suitable place to locate a farm, for instance. And finally, if you don't know what data you need or you don't understand how to parse through existing resources, please don't be afraid to ask for help. Local and state level and other planners such as myself would be more than willing to help you find the data you need to make your comprehensive plan a reality. And so what does collecting the data look like? It kind of, once you collect the data, you will make observations, usually in writing, but most impactfully, the data is presented in the form of visuals. So the picture on the left shows the existing land use patterns in the town of Maryland. And you'll see, and more specifically, the picture shows the designation of zoning districts within the town. And you'll notice here that there are several colors, each representing a zoning district, each having its own set of approved, allowed, not allowed, and allowed unconditionally type of land uses. And so it's important to kind of look at this and you kind of get an idea of what the development pattern should look like from a computer. But again, you need to be on the ground to actually see the development pattern in action. And the other item on the right actually represents kind of that bottom-up approach that I spoke of in the previous slide to gathering data for your comprehensive plan. This map shows where the residents of the town of Maryland would like to see different types of development. And we gathered this data at our focus groups and our open houses, and we asked residents to use thumbtacks to show what type of development they wanted in the town of Maryland. So you'll see here that the red dots represent commercial development, the white dots represent housing, and the black dots represent industrial development. And you'll notice that a majority of the dots are located around the hamlet of Skanevis, which is the most densely populated hamlet in the town of Maryland. And that tells you something about where development priorities should be located and where the public might be amenable to seeing new projects go in. And so the key, when we were developing the plan, we sought to turn public input into an actionable document. The public had many differing opinions, and so our role as a facilitator was to identify a center line which would encompass as much of the town's perspective into a document which was readable and which actually outlined clear steps that the town could take to make itself a better place to live. And the overarching goal of the plan development was to use data to inform the creation of a vision on how the town of Maryland wanted to grow over the next 20 years. We needed evidence to suggest why economic development was important, why we wanted certain housing policies to be in place, why the zoning code might need to be revised, why environmental protection was important. All of that relied on data that we used in the comprehensive plan. And the steering committee played a key role in assisting with public engagement. They helped reserve spaces, they attended and helped at meetings, they tabled at community events, they helped interact with the public, and they really played a key role in brokering the adoption of the comprehensive plan. OCCA itself, we kind of were supporting them in what they wanted to accomplish, and we did a lot of the writing of the actual document. And the document itself is an 81-page behemoth that kind of, is very dense. But this image I wanted to show you, and I apologize for the blurriness of this picture, but the use of data and the kind of massive stakeholder engagement efforts that were undertaken ended up creating a document or a picture that shows kind of which projects needed to be prioritized, where they were, and how much they may cost. And so when we were doing these kind of policy recommendations, we wanted to kind of identify those key priorities the town wanted to address. And in doing so, the town identified numerous capital projects that they would like to have implemented. And our job was to describe what the projects were and how the town would consider paying for them, or what types of grant sources could help them pay for it. And this kind of approach allowed us to use the evidence that we gathered from the plan development process and turn it into the identification of key projects that the town felt, if implemented, would make the town a better place. And so it's one thing to identify a priority project and to describe it, and then to say, okay, we need to do this because we think it'll be good. The most important thing that OCCA and the town of Maryland did was to create an implementation matrix. And as you see here, the implementation matrix contains a key overarching goal, and they have several subsequent policy recommendations, which kind of describe what the town would like to accomplish in order to meet the goal. The next thing we identified was a project champion. In a town with part-time elected officials and many volunteer boards, it's important that a champion is selected who will be in charge of spearheading a project and making sure that it gets from point A to point B with a minimal delay. From there, we identified potential partners, and we also identified potential funding sources. And last but not least, we identified a time frame in which the project would like to be completed. So your short-term project would be under 3 years, the medium being like 3 to 6, and intermediate being like 6 to 10. And so when these projects were kind of selected, this kind of implementation matrix acts as the social contract for the members of the public to hold their town officials accountable. For example, if you were to attend a town board meeting and you knew that there was a key bridge repair going on that you had a personal interest in, you could hold up the comprehensive plan and say, where are we with this? What have you done? You said you would have this project done in 3 years, and now it's been 5. What's going on? And having this document in your hand makes your voice that much more powerful, because you're showing the town that they committed to you that the project would be done. And so the final step of the comprehensive planning process was to get the plan adopted. OCCA worked with the Maryland Town Board to establish a clear understanding of each policy recommendation and its associated implementation strategies. This mutual understanding was incredibly important because the town board, by adopting the comprehensive plan, assumes responsibility, at least on paper, to making sure that those objectives are achieved to the greatest extent possible. So it's really imperative that each town board member clearly understand what is being recommended, how such recommendations will be implemented, and either agrees or declines to disagree with what's included there. We also worked extensively to obtain approval from members of the public. We made the comprehensive plan widely available in both hard copy format and on a CD. And ultimately, the plan was adopted unanimously and has now gone into effect in the town. So if I were to share lessons learned about our experience, the first and most important lesson is to be specific about what you want to accomplish. Think about your municipality and think about key, small, targeted investments that you can make that will have the biggest change, and make sure you get that thing done and do it over and over again. And that point is really important to stress because having a clear idea about a targeted investment you want to make makes it all that much more likely that people will follow through with the implementation of a project rather than having a broad, nebulous recommendation that is subject to changing political winds and changing volunteer interest. The final lesson learned was to make sure that your volunteers don't get burnt out. If you have a volunteer steering committee working with you, or if you're part of one yourself, make sure you don't burn out. Your involvement doesn't end when the comprehensive plan is finished. Rather, it's just beginning. Plan implementation is a critical step of the comprehensive planning process, and one that really relies on citizen engagement and that bottom-up approach to making your town a better place. And so I kind of wanted to touch on some kind of final food for thought points about comprehensive planning. The first being is it's important to observe conditions in your town. What do I mean by observe conditions in your town? I mean literally following people as they go about their day-to-day activities. Think about what works when they go from point A to point B. Do they have to drive? Can they walk everywhere? Is it safe? Is it not safe? Are there things to do? Things to see? Are there activities? Is your neighborhood lively? So on and so forth. Think about what's good, and then when you notice things that are bad, such as cracked pavement, boarded up storefronts, people walking along streets without adequate sidewalks or pedestrian protections, think about what could be done to make your community or that area better. And in order to incentivize yourself to do this, start off by finding your favorite neighborhood and asking yourself specifically, what do you like about it? Put it on paper and bring it to your local city council or village board member or town board member and talk to them about how they would build upon what you like about your neighborhood and see what their perspective is. Last but not least, go to high traffic areas and people watch. Let's look at where they gather. Where do people stop and where do they just keep moving? Think about kind of what can be done to get people to stick more downtown. I mean, stay in one spot or stay within a certain radius. Think about what would kind of keep people in your retail areas, what would move people in commuting areas from point A to point B faster, or what would bring people to enjoy green spaces like parks, rail trails, and the like. So that all of those kind of recommendations really will inform the creation of a comprehensive plan through observational analysis. Another aspect to consider is to identify barriers to compact development in your zoning code. A lot of people see zoning as a double-edged sword, and they kind of don't want to look at zoning codes because they're boring and extremely dense. However, unbeknownst to many, your zoning code can actually prohibit a lot of the development that you would like to see when in fact you're thinking that it's actually encouraging it. And so the first thing to look at when you're evaluating your zoning code is to see whether it divides land uses by use or by form. Use can refer to things like restaurants, laundromats, auto repair shops, so on and so forth. And your zoning districts will each allow a certain set of uses by right or by special use permit. And the division may seem arbitrary and it also may seem restrictive. Form-based codes focus on the appearance and functionality of the building itself. So for example, form-based codes focus a lot on facade design, where your doors are located, where your windows are located, how the buildings interact with their neighboring areas, what their height and bulk is, and how that relates to the streetscape. It doesn't really care as much about what kind of use is in the building. It's more concerned about making sure that the built environment is fluid, clean, and the design is appealing to the general public. The next question to ask is, what does your zoning code seek to achieve? Many zoning codes, not all, many zoning codes have an objective about kind of what the priorities are and how those priorities relate to the comprehensive plan. But it's important, even when reviewing those goals, is to look at the ordinance itself and think about, what does your zoning code seek to achieve? Does it seek to kind of keep development patterns the same? Does it allow for a flexible development pattern? Does it allow people to experiment with new things, especially in the time of COVID? And if it doesn't, how do you fix those common barriers? And some of the common barriers can include anything ranging from minimum lot sizes to parking minimums, and whether or not more than one primary use is allowed on the same parcel. So these are all common barriers that actually restrict development and limit the flexibility of zoning to tackle current planning challenges. The final item I'd want to leave you with is to make sure that your comprehensive plans align with statewide policy initiatives. During the plan development phase, it's important to identify all state programs that your town takes advantage of and all pending ones that the town could take advantage of. Build your plan around those initiatives and clearly identify how you plan to take advantage of them. The next thing I'd like to recommend is to identify challenges posed to your town by state level programs or policies, and identify ways to address them, or identify areas in which the state can help your town meet new policy mandates. It's one thing to complain about them, and to run to, a political campaign describing your disenchantment with certain initiatives. But it's also important to inform state agencies on how you feel that those programs can be amended to benefit your town's residents. And last but not least, it's important to align your policy recommendations with where the state level funding priorities are. So when the state budget is passed and the state announces that their priorities to fund climate resilience, and it's really critical that your comprehensive plan focuses on climate resilience and is oriented towards getting as much funds for climate resilience projects as possible. Finally, OCCA is offering online planning classes. If you are interested, please email me at planner@OCCAinfo to sign up, OCCAinfo.org to sign up. What's included? We have courses on comprehensive planning, which is a much deeper and more detailed dive into what we discussed today. We have courses on the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act. We have courses on zoning, and finally, we have courses on environmental planning. OCCA also offers a circuit rider planner program. We assist municipalities with environmental review, comprehensive planning, zoning, and other environmental initiatives. Right now, we offer a 50-50 cost share for municipalities, and our full consulting rate applies to individuals or private entities. We also offer other trainings on agricultural and farmland protection planning, as well as the other topics that I discussed earlier. So if you have any questions, here's my contact information. The best number to reach me at is the number on the right, which is my cell phone number, or to email me at planner@OCCAinfo.org. Thank you, everybody, and I really appreciate the opportunity to present.